Well, thank you very much, and thank you to the Economist for the invitation. Thank you, Mr. Minister, for your views. Look, in earlier sessions, we heard about the really strong economic performance of Greece over the past several years in terms of economic growth, in terms of much improved macroeconomic prospects. And there is no question that the maritime ports of Greece have played a vital role in facilitating that from happening. Port of Piraeus went from being essentially a local small port in dire financial straits in 2009 to now being a global transshipment hub that is important for global trade. The Port of Thessaloniki, just I think a couple of weeks ago or something like this, their master plan for expansion was approved by the government. It's going to more than double, maybe triple its handling capacity. Port of Alexandroupolis, well positioned potentially to serve connectivity to Bulgaria, Romania, Ukraine. These are significant improvements. And they go well beyond infrastructure investment, just to be clear. I mean, this is also a result of sustained reform progress by the government of Greece, starting all the way back to 2007 with adoption of landlord port model of port governance that opened the door for the concession agreements for Port of Piraeus that transformed the port in 2009. Then we saw the adoption of railway reform according to the EU acquis in 2010 to 2013. We saw the adoption for the first time of a logistics law in 2014. We saw the privatization of Port of Piraeus, privatization of Port of Thessaloniki, privatization of the public railway undertaking, etc. Right? So it's more than 10 years of sustained reform. And what we have seen from the perspective of the World Bank is that many of you may have heard of the Logistics Performance Index. It's a calculation done by the World Bank of the logistics performance of countries. And during this period of reform I was just referring to, roughly from 2010 to 2022, Greece was the country that improved the most its logistics performance, according to the LPI, in all of Europe. And today, the logistics performance of Greece is well above the average of the European Union. This is very, very plain to see results. There are hundreds of millions of euros committed for investment in Aspropyrgos area, for example, including the Triasio Logistics Center we were just hearing about, and there are others. It's a really, really tangible economic results that are facilitated by the maritime ports of Greece. At the same time, from our perspective, there is still significant potential that can still be captured. You know, if you look at the way that freight is moved in Greece, only a very small portion, maybe 2 to 3% of the tonnage is moved by rail, and the ports are connected to rail. We cannot talk about, and you were talking about just now on rail, but we cannot talk about the four walls, what happens within the four walls of a port. It's all about how these ports are connected to their hinterland. And in order to facilitate more use of rail, in rail freight within Greece, we're gonna have to better connect ports to rail, right? So that is one big opportunity. And, you know, I was looking at some of the questions, kind of facilitating questions that the Economist had asked me to look at, and they were saying, you know, how do I think that disruption in the global supply chain may impact ports? Perfect example of that is the crisis at the moment, the Red Sea. Port of Piraeus has actually been rather remarkably resilient. The volumes in 2024, despite the crisis, were only really down 6% for the year. The beginning of the year, they were down 12% or something like that, and then they recovered. That's really resilient. But to me, probably the most effective way of protecting or making Greece's ports more resilient to these kinds of disruptions is to expand their hinterland, is to expand the market they serve. And to me, the largest market that they can serve, that is within their hinterland, is Central Europe. Mm-hmm. Central Europe is the most important freight hinterland in this part of the world. And at the moment, the ports of Greece only serve a very, very small portion of that market. We estimate they serve about 0.1% of the Central European market, because this is a market that is primarily served by rail, right? So we have the connectivity at the port level, but then we don't have the hinterland connectivity. So to me, that's a major opportunity to push for regional integration that will require investments, that will require further progress on reforms. But importantly, it will require collaboration with all of the other countries that are part of this corridor between what we call the Southeast Europe, Central Europe corridor, collaborations between Greece and North Macedonia and Bulgaria and Romania and Serbia. We heard earlier about the 10T corridors, right, that include now the Western Balkans. The table is set for this to happen. And this would not happen, would have happened. Greece would not be in this position, in a completely realistic position, to become a gateway to Central Europe without its maritime ports. And to me, this is kind of the next step, is to open up the markets to not only serve Greece, but to serve Central Europe. Central Europe is orders of magnitude. It's something like 11 times the size of the containerized market of Greece. It's like 4 or 5 times the size of the entire Balkan Peninsula combined. So it's a major, major market, and to me, the table is set to serve it.